You want the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth about sports in the state of Michigan?
You can't handle the truth!
Well, we're giving you the Michigan Sports Truth Podcast, the show that provides research and statistics about all the Detroit and Michigan sports teams, whether fans like it or not, and detects, exposes, and reveals actual and hidden facts and truth that the mainstream media doesn't want you to know. No junk, no entertainment, no homerism, no slappiness, no coddling, no pop culture, no conspiracy theories, no opinions, no shilling, and no fluff. Head over to our website, the MichiganSportsTruthPodcast.com. Follow us on Twitter, Periscope, and Instagram at Michigan_Truth. And like and share our verified Facebook page, the Michigan Sports Truth Podcast. Also listen to us on Spreaker, CastBox, iHeartRadio, Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts via iTunes, and Spotify. The Michigan Sports Truth Podcast does not represent or defame any of the teams it covers, nor does it represent or compete against any mainstream media in the state of Michigan. It is also not for entertainment or debating purposes. It only detects, exposes, and reveals honest, actual, and hidden truth, facts, and statistics about them. And it is for every sports fan's own good because the truth is out there. And welcome to another episode of the independent edition of the Michigan Sports Truth Podcast. I'm Taylor Phillips. Follow me on Twitter, Periscope, and Instagram at DT2Phillips with 2 L's. The Tigers have made some improvements with their product roster. They added C.J. Cron, Jonathan Scope, Austin Romine, and Cameron Maben. One disappointing addition they made was relief pitcher Alex Wilson, who in spring training was beyond awful, and so they released him. Cron and Scope powered the team's offense until they suffered season-ending injuries, which was a blow to its offense, but that's not really the issue why Detroit couldn't make the MLB postseason, although it came close at one point heading into the trade deadline when they traded Maben to the Cubs for prospect infielder Zach Short. They could have been buyers at the deadline, but they just weren't good enough. For the rest of their offense, it's just the same thing with Nico Goodrum, Jamer Candelario, Christian Stewart, Jacoby Jones, Victor Reyes, and others. Not good enough. At least Victor Reyes had himself a year. Their pitching staff was horrible, and that was the main issue with the whole 60-game quarantine regular season. Jordan Zimmerman was out for most of the season before he came back, but he only pitched limited innings like Michael Fulmer did this year. Zimmerman might be done with baseball after his contract has already expired, while Fulmer is only a few seasons into the majors and might need more help with his mechanics. Matt Boyd was absolutely terrible for most of the season. He did improve statistically lately somehow, but not by much. His ERA finished at .671, although he did finish strong. The organization's general manager, Al Avila, may give him more time starting next year for that reason. Hopefully, if so, it's only a make-or-break one-year contract for that guy. And the organization dubbed him as their ace when he got scorched constantly. That shows another example of how inept the Tigers front office continues to be, and it keeps growing even more inept. So inept that I had already continued to care less about them until the Ilitches sell them to a more competent owner that means more business. I know what fans are thinking about Casey Mize and Tarek Skubal, but here are the facts. They both weren't called up by this ineptitude machine of a baseball organization at the beginning of the season. They didn't have enough time to develop because there were no minor league baseball games for them to play in because of the coronavirus pandemic. And the Tigers coaching staff has no ability whatsoever to develop any player, young or old. The organization has no player development system at all. That's why Mize and Skubal didn't fare too well in their major league debuts. I'd say give them more time. Speaking of the coaching staff, their manager Ron Gardenhire retired before the end of the final year of his 3-year contract due to health concerns. He suffered a really bad stomachache in Minnesota right after the very beginning of September, and he made the safe and right decision to call it quits. Besides, he was already over the hill even before he got fired from the Twins after the end of the 2014 season. But this is what left their initial bench coach Lloyd McClendon the acting interim manager for the team for the rest of this season. McClendon may have experience managing an MLB team, the Seattle Mariners, except not by very long. And he's not smart either because the Tigers kept losing under him for the rest of this past season, which is beyond terrible and unacceptable. I don't see the future being any brighter if they don't get rid of him somehow. The Lions drafted Jeff Okuda, a very talented cornerback that defended very well at Ohio State with the Buckeyes before his awful NFL debut in Green Bay. He had a hamstring injury in Week 1 against the Chicago Bears. But then he finally got his first NFL interception in Arizona in Week 3 and returned it 36 yards into Cardinal territory. Almost a pick six if you ask me. Their secondary defense altogether, however, has allowed at least 200 passing yards per game because they always keep leaving opposing receivers wide open. They may have snapped an 11-game losing streak by winning 26-23, but this is only false hope, and I become numb to this every year. So numb that I can't even feel the slightest single pinch of pain anywhere inside of my soul. I still doubt they'll come close to making the playoffs unless I'm proven wrong in the future. Even more doubt they'll even win a playoff game. This is a make or break year for Matt Patricia, and I doubt he'll stick around after this season. Red Wings general manager Steve Yzerman made a splash trade acquiring defenseman Marc Staal and a 2021 second-round draft pick from the New York Rangers for undisclosed future considerations. And he released both defensemen Jonathan Ericsson and Trevor Daley. Ericsson was a horrible defender in his own zone and was injury-prone, and he may already be washed up. Daley, on the other hand, just didn't do much at all. That's why Steve Yzerman should be applauded by the team's fan base for making those moves. But this is only a start, except it's a big one. There are other players he still has yet to get rid of. Jimmy Howard, Justin Abdelkader, Darren Helm, Danny DeKeyser, Franz Nielsen, and Madison Bowie. Luke Glendening also may have been signed to a long-term contract by Ken Holland, but at least he's good on the penalty kill, except he doesn't produce much offensively. Also, the next regular season will be the final year of head coach Jeff Blashill's 2-year contract extension, which was initially signed by Ken Holland, who is the general manager for the Edmonton Oilers, who actually made the playoffs. Blashill had better not stay with the Wings after next season, otherwise they might not improve by much, if at all. The Pistons already got rid of Andre Drummond and Reggie Jackson. They still have Blake Griffin and Derrick Rose. Not to mention Luke Kennard. Not to mention Dwayne Casey is still their head coach. Just another one of those head coaches that can't push the right buttons in critical situations of any game. No matter who they have on their roster, the ineptitude of Detroit continues on their court. New general manager Troy Weaver has at least some work cut out for himself. That's all I have for this short installment of the independent edition of the Michigan Sports Truth Podcast. Check out our show's website, the MichiganSportsTruthPodcast.com, like its verified Facebook page of the Michigan Sports Truth Podcast, and follow its Twitter, Periscope, and Instagram at Michigan_Truth. I'm Taylor Phillips signing off. Follow me on Twitter, Periscope, and Instagram at DT2Phillips with 2 L's. Thanks very much for listening, downloading, and sharing, and remember, the truth is out there.
TTFN, ta-ta for now.
The Michigan Sports Truth Podcast does not represent or defame any of the teams it covers, nor does it represent or compete against any mainstream media in the state of Michigan. It is also not for entertainment or debating purposes. It only detects, exposes, and reveals honest, actual, and hidden truth, facts, and statistics about them, and it is for every sports fan's own good because the truth is out there.
Mission complete.